understand just like the entire pipeline of like how to actually get data to your front end. Yeah. And that's why, again, like I know I touched on it before, I don't really like the dichotomy between front end and back end, because often it kind of creates this divide that is unnecessary.
Totally.
UI engineers obviously need to understand where they're getting the data from, and if need be, they should be able to write, write those backend services as well, depending on the size of your company, right? But yeah, I think just bridging that gap is just a natural extension of one, the maturity of the technology landscape in front end, right? Again, breaking down that divide, like why do we have to do everything client side, right? And this wasn't a controversial thing back in the early days of the web, right? It was everything primarily was done on the server side, right? And so just getting out of that model that, hey, everything is simply just running client side, and understanding that, well, it's really up to you as the engineer to figure out where it makes sense to do that compute. And a lot of compute simply does make sense to do it in the back end, right? I still think that for the majority of the applications in the hedge fund space, they probably will have a lot of client-side code because there's a lot of interactivity in the sense of if you have real-time streaming of data, right? That's just simply not possible to do a lot of that on the back end and sending that HTML to the client. There are different technologies that deal well with streaming data like that, but I still think that the way that a lot of these hedge funds and the way that I would implement this, things like streaming data would be a lot in client side. But things for like just static pages or just that are primarily static, a lot of this can be done server side, and we can also just do a lot of. It opens up a lot of possibilities. Like we can do computations that would be just impossible to do on the client side simply because they shouldn't have access to that data or just due to performance reasons, right? We can't guarantee that they're always going to be using a high-end machine to be using these applications. And so shifting that compute, especially like the heavy compute over onto server side just makes a lot of sense here. And I'm glad that the JavaScript ecosystem has finally kind of created solutions that make it easy for developers to do that.